Pennsauken Township Board of Education to send the Kerry Post and Berlin Inquirer. Notice appeared in the legal notice section of the Kerry Post stating the time, date, location, and a formal action will be taken at that time. Notice is also posted with the Township Clerk. As President, I declare this to be a legal meeting for the Board of Education. Roll call, Mr. Oberg.
Mr. Copeland?
Present.
Mr. McDevitt? Here. Dr. Maloney?
Present.
Mr. Starkle? Here. James Williams? James Wilson? Rodriguez?
Mr. O'Brien. Here. Thank you. Mr. Rodriguez did inform me that he did not be able to attend tonight. Please stand for the salute to the flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to the superintendent. Dr. Johnson, if you could have the CAPA report for us.
Thank you. Good evening, folks. The CAPA report is a consequence of the county coming in and looking at the various aspects of your school system. They submit a report with recommendations. The high school, which was the focus, will present a status report on those recommendations. So at this time, I'm asking Mr. Vincent and his staff to make that presentation.
I don't know if other board members want to, but I'm going to move to the audience so I can close it.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Thank you, board members. Thank you, public. Appreciate the opportunity tonight to come before the board and talk a little bit about where we are with the CAPA recommendations, as Dr. Johnson said. Tonight, actually, two of my assistant principals are currently trying to unjam the copy machine. And so they'll come back, and I'm going to use them part of our presentation. A third member of my team is present right here, and that's one of my newest assistant principals, Tom Honeyman. Tom Honeyman is an assistant principal this year here at the high school. He was an English teacher for approximately 10 or 11 years here at the high school, so it's been a great addition to our team. And I'll introduce the other members later. First of all, let me just kind of go back for a minute. And what I think is important tonight, I'm not trying to face you, everybody move. I think it's important tonight to talk a little bit about where we've been, but I think the most important thing is where are we going. I think that's one of the things that we can talk a little bit about some of the things that have happened in the past. But what I think the public and the board and the superintendent want to hear are what are we doing to improve our instruction. Ultimately, it's about student achievement. So that's our goal tonight. So first of all, let me just give a little background. CAPA is Collaborative Assessment for Planning and Achievement. We spend so much time on CAPA, we forget really what it's about. But it's about planning and it's achievement, and it's also really, I think the key is collaborative, how we work together to try to improve our school. So, quick little background, approximately April 5th, we had a three-day visit here at the high school. An external team, a CAPA team came in. Normally, during the year, we have a CAPA visit in the spring. In the fall, we have one consultant come in. This past April, we had a team of approximately 7 to 8 members from the State Department. They were coming into the school. They spent 3 days. We spent time leading up, providing documentation. And then for those 3 days, they did walkthroughs. They did interviews with students, administrators, counselors, board members, central office. And then at the end, they reported back out to the staff, to our team, made recommendations. Immediately at the end of that day, we had a faculty meeting where we immediately shared with our faculty the recommendations, which were just, in that part, just the beginning stages of recommendations. We started looking at it immediately, where do we go? Where do we go from here with these recommendations? Tonight, you're going to see approximately 28 recommendations. Part of the CAPA team, when they come up with our plan, our action plan, they speak to trying to identify 1 or 2 areas that we should focus on to really improve our school. Prior to Dr. Johnson even coming on board with my team, we talked about not losing focus on the 28, making sure that we pay attention to those 28, but we do want to look at some of the recommendations that we feel can move our school in the greatest direction and improvement in the quickest amount of time. So we'll highlight some of those ideas also. So if you have any questions, please, for clarification, feel free. If you need something cleared up, absolutely ask a question, and then we'll come back and we'll deal with any specific questions. So the first thing I would like to do, prior to CAPA, which is interesting, we have so many external associations now that deal with trying to improve instruction and student achievement. We have a Title I plan that we must file with the state. We have a professional development plan that we must file. We have the capital restructuring. One of the things that we looked at, and this is a separate handout that you should have with you, is, and I kind of titled this Administrative Responsibilities Handout. And it's a front and back page, and one is from last year's school year, and that would be the 2010-2011 school year, and the 2011-2012 on the other side. So it's a little bit of where we've been, and then it's also where we're going. As I said before, I don't want to dwell too much in the past, because we have all been here for the most of that, and we talked a little bit. But I will go back for a moment and just kind of touch base on what our administrative structure looked like last year. And that was the 2010-2011 year. For various reasons, from some budget issues, from some retirements, we looked at a structure. And for lack, just to kind of speed this up a little bit, we had 2 assistant principals responsible for the 4 grade levels. We had a 9-11 assistant principal for student management, and 9-11 and 10-12. We had an assistant principal doing predominantly buildings and operations, and we had an assistant principal dealing with curriculum instruction. Based on feedback from CAPA, based on the administrative team that we have in place, based on some of the other conversations we have in central office, and really kind of, I would say, really cementing that is when Dr. Johnson came on board and I started sharing with him some of my ideas. We're making the recommendation to look at a change in that administrative structure that we feel would be best to really make the implementation of our recommendations. So if you look at the 2011-2012 school year, we're looking at, because one very important piece of this is we're fully staffed administratively. We're looking at having, and I would say it's traditional, but with some non-traditional roles. We will have an assistant principal for grade 9. That assistant principal would be Ms. Tracy Turner, who's on vacation, so that's why she's not here tonight. Ms. Turner will take the grade 9 responsibilities. The grade 10 assistant principal would be the one gentleman, I guess, is still doing copies. Luis Ambers is one of my new assistant principals who comes to us from the Bridgeton School District. Luis will do grade 10. Mr. Honeyman, Tom Honeyman, will do grade 11. And grade 12 will be another assistant principal who's on vacation, and that is Mr. Norris Thomas, will do grade 12. In addition to that, we still have the Booker T campus assistant principal that comes underneath the high school. One final position which has remained intact from before is an assistant principal who oversees guidance, and that would be Mr. Mike McGovern. In addition to Mike's responsibilities of guidance, he also is a coordinator for testing. Obviously, in this age that we live in with high-stake testing, it's critical, from the AP test to the HESPA, just the amount of work there. And Mr. Ambers just arrived. So Mr. Luis Ambers, grade 10, and we'll talk some more about his role. So I think I wanted to touch upon the restructuring, the administrative responsibilities as we go forward and talk about how we're going to roll out the recommendations, because I think that's critical when we look at the recommendations, how we do that. At this time, just to highlight, when CAPA comes in, CAPA has 7 standards that they look at. And we're going to go through the 7 standards and look at strengths, recommendations, and then our actions moving forward. So that each of these areas they've identified, and they make a report back on that. I know it's a lot. There's copies of this, but I just wanted to put this up there. You can read these strengths. This is directly from the CAPA report. Again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time unless somebody wants to talk about a strength, but I want to get right into the recommendations and then the actions to address those areas that we feel we need to do. But I do think it's important, and I'm a big believer in this, we're doing a lot of things right in our building. We are improving our test scores. We need to do better. We absolutely need to do better, but there is progress being made. So I think one of the things that I enjoy being here is when we had the opportunity in November to talk about the AYP report. We've come to the board and we've spoken to the board for 2 years now. What are we doing to address academics? I think that's a pretty powerful moment when we talk about the academics. So some of this is going to be a little bit redundant with that because I think we're doing some good things. What I think we need to look at, though, is the climate and culture. And I'm going to kind of take a moment and just kind of go off for a second. On a side note, I think the biggest challenge that faces the high school, and this is coming out of our school leadership team, from our staff, is we are going to address climate and culture and morale, along with not losing focus on instruction. So I think you're going to hear that theme tonight as we go forward. So just some strengths of our curriculum. Our supervisors have done a very good job making sure we're aligned. We're constantly revising curriculum. I think that's the important thing. This is a strength, but by no stretch of the imagination are we finished with it. We're not content with it. We're moving forward with those changes, and we're going to be working on that nonstop. One of the areas that we had, because we were having a growing number of students, is ESL students. This year, for the first time in Pennsauken at the high school, we had a consultant come in to really study ESL because of that number. That is why you're going to see strengths and recommendations for the ESL program. I think it's a program that we've made some great strides. We have a very strong program. Can we do more? Absolutely. But that's why you're going to see ESL coming up there, is that's an area that they're focusing because of the growing number of our population.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Get those letters, would you tell the audience what they mean?
English as second language, absolutely. English as a second language. We currently, I'm sorry? ELL, I'm sorry. English limited language. That's why I brought these gentlemen in. English language learner, thank you. We have one teacher and we have approximately 35 students in that program, but we do have a number of students who have exited out of that program. So it is a population that we monitor very closely. Okay, recommendations. I think this is where we want to look at it right now. Coming out of the CAP report underneath curriculum is the idea of what should we be looking at, what recommendations they made to us. This is the points, these are right here are 3 of the 28. We want to focus on all 3 of these. Teachers should collaborate and create lessons and are project-oriented. We believe that's just good instruction. The curriculum should include resources for additional support for students low achieving, English, the ESL students there, and students with disabilities. We know that's an area we need to address. We want to provide time to plan strategies that reflect the best practices there. And again, the ESL curriculum, we want to integrate the English language arts. We want to look at the standards there. So, and I'm more than happy to go back and forth. So what are we doing? What are our actions? What do we have in place? We started this last year. It's classroom instruction that works. It's Robert Marzano. It's best practice. It's research-based. It's been shown that if you implement these strategies, there's a direct percentage to improve instruction and student achievement. We need to continue to do that. We had a cohort group last year that was working on being trained in CITW. Our administrators were trained. We want to keep growing that cohort group out so that becomes a common language of the high school. You'll see CITW, Classroom Instruction Works, throughout this presentation. We want to, and this is just one example, we want to continue department collaborative initiatives. We want English teachers working with social ed teachers, math and science working. We need to start tearing down some of those walls that we've created where we only see the math teacher as the person who's responsible for improving math scores. We want to work on other people with the English. So we want to try to keep fostering those professional dialogues. We want to be having those conversations. We are doing that, but again, I think we need to be working a little bit more in that regard. And we hope that some of the initiatives that we're doing. This year, our October in service is really department driven, which means the individual departments are going to be working on those strategies. So we're going to keep trying to move that curriculum forward. There was many positives that came out of the curriculum. I think for me, it kind of reinforced that we're on the right track. We don't want to lose focus on what we're doing. They did not say that we were doing anything, I don't want to say wrong, but they were not saying that we were going in a different direction. But I think we need to keep that moving forward underneath the curriculum. Okay, Standard 2. Standard 2 deals with classroom evaluation and assessment. A couple of the strengths we included, we began the power walkthroughs, which we talked to the board about. They supported that idea, is to collect data in real terms, to show instructional trends. There's been a lot of conversation, and I know the board has heard this in the public, about Scantron. We believe in Scantron. It gives us data that we can use. It helps us make good decisions. We structure our classes based on the district assessments. Math teachers have worked in the benchmarking. Language arts teachers, including ESL, use portfolio assessments. We're using rubrics. The ESL teachers help other general teachers develop alternative assessments. These are strengths.